Hotep, everybody. This is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network and host of the African History Network show. It is Thursday, February 22nd, 2024, and African American History Month, Black History Month continues. And I've been getting questions on my social media platforms about my new 10-week online course that I teach on the weekend, usually on Saturdays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So I'm going to do a preview of that class, go over some of the slides in the class, deal with some of the content, and show you the extensive class outline, class lesson plan that I've put together. Okay, so the lesson plan is already done for all 10 classes, and we did an introduction back on February 3rd. And the class started February 10th. So our next class will be Sunday, special day, Sunday, February 25th, 2024. All right. Now, when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, we have to understand that we can't start studying our history in slavery. We have to deal with thousands of years of history that leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And we have the class lesson plan on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, so you can review the entire 10-week lesson plan. We have to deal with thousands of years of history that leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And we have to deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who take the teachings from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, into Europe. And these teachings bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. Okay, so this class, I started teaching it in 2017. I've been studying history over 30 years. This class evolved out of a 4.5-hour lecture that I did back in January 2014. And in this 10-week online course, there are over 200 slides that I show you in the class that I put together. We look at 80 to 100 articles. There are 15 books that we reference. You don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in class. The video clips that I show you as well, interviews that I've done with many of our scholars, like Professor James Small, Professor Kabahaya Watakamene, Runoko Rashidi, etc. Dr. David Imhotep also. Okay, so this is a fantastic class. You can register for this class at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Class is on sale right now, $80. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. And in class session number 2, we looked at some history dealing with African American History Month. We know February is Black History Month, African American History Month, created by Dr. Carter G. Woodson in February 1976. February 1926. It started February 7th, 1926. We know Dr. Carter G. Woodson was the co-founder of the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, which is now the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, ASALH. We know he was a prolific writer. He wrote numerous books. His most popular book, The Miseducation of the Negro, in 1933. And I also talked about this year's annual theme for African American History Month, which is African Americans and the Arts. African Americans and the Arts. Okay, so we talked about that as well. And there's been an annual theme for African American History Month since 1928. Since 1928. So we went over this type of information in class number 2 also. All right. So some of the things that we deal with in the class, and I'm going to refer back and forth from the class outline that I put together to the some of the slides in the course also. Okay. So be patient with me as we transition. With the origins of Black History Month and Dr. Carter G. Woodson, we talked about Dink Nesh, which means you are amazing in Amharic, and this was Australopithecus afarensis, These remains at the time that they were found in Ethiopia in 1974 were the oldest remains of any human. This was a pre-human. Let's look at it as a pre-human. Australopithecus afarensis. Her remains date back 3.2 million years. There's a global timeline of history that we use in the class also that comes from blackpast.org. So they have a good timeline of history. We talked about the Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885. Where these European nations come together to divide Africa, to continue to rape Africa of the mineral wealth, and so they can stop fighting and killing each other over the mineral wealth of Africa. So we deal with some of that history. I talked about a little bit of the history of Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865. Major General Gordon Granger goes into Galveston, Texas. And there was a good article from the New York Times that dealt with how most Americans don't understand the history of Juneteenth. Now, this article came out in, it was about June of 2021 when this article came out. But one of the things that people don't seem to understand, and this is why one of the reasons why it's so hard for us to get any type of reparative justice, any type of reparations, okay, any substantial type of reparations, is because Americans are very ignorant of history, okay? Americans are very ignorant of history, regardless of race or ethnicity. So there was this good article from the New York Times. Most Americans know little or nothing about Juneteenth, poll finds, and it found that 60% of Americans knew little or nothing about Juneteenth. And I would argue that most of what they think they know is false, because Juneteenth was not the last day of slavery, okay? Because June 19th, 1865, when Major General Gordon Granger delivered General Order Number 3 in Galveston, Texas, and then he and his troops of almost 2,000 Union Negro soldiers go all throughout Texas to bring Texas back into the Union, okay, because Texas had seceded from the Union. Well, the 13th Amendment is what legally frees the slaves and what legally ends chattel slavery in this country. The 13th Amendment was not ratified until December 6, 1865, when Georgia ratified the 13th Amendment. Okay. The Emancipation Proclamation did not free the slaves. That's January 1st, 1863. And we, in the class, we look at it, and I tell people to go to archives.gov and read the Emancipation Proclamation, or go to loc.gov, Library of Congress website, and read the Emancipation Proclamation, because it specifically tells you that the territories that are in rebellion, those territories that belong to the Confederacy, those slaves would be free if those territories did not come back into the Union by January 1st, 1863. But it gives exceptions. It gives exceptions to the border states, Maryland, Missouri, Kentucky, and Delaware. They were allowed to keep their slaves. Okay. Maryland did not abolish slavery until November 1864. Okay. And that had to be put on the ballot. They had to vote on that. The Emancipation Proclamation did not free the slaves. So one of the things that we do in this class, from class number 1, is dispel a lot of myths that are out here dealing with history. Okay. If you read, this is an article that we look at in the class. The not quite free state, Maryland dragged its feet on emancipation during the Civil War. Now, this is from Washington Post, September 13th, 2013. Interestingly enough, September 13th is the day before September 14th, 1814, when Francis Scott Key wrote The Defense of Fort McHenry, which was a poem that became known as the Star Spangled Banner. And you see the video that I did dealing with the Black National Anthem and the Star Spangled Banner, how Francis Scott Key was a white supremacist slave owner who thought that African people were mentally inferior, and how the Star Spangled Banner the whole song is a white supremacist song, not just the third stanza. Okay. But the vote was, the final vote was 30,174 in favor of freeing the slaves to 29,799 against. November 1st, 1864, Maryland slaves were declared free only a few months before Congress would approve the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery. Now, this is almost 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. So there's a lot of this history in mainstream media that I hear being repeated during Juneteenth, all this stuff that's just false. Now, Juneteenth is very important. It's very important that Juneteenth became a federal holiday. One, that's the only federal holiday that acknowledges slavery. Okay. You do have Emancipation Day, which is April 16th. Okay. But that's recognized not as much. That's largely celebrated in Washington, D.C. Why is April 16th significant? April 16th, 1862, that's when the Compensated Emancipation Act of 1862 was signed into law by President Abraham Lincoln. It passed Congress, passed the House, passed the Senate. It was a bill sponsored by an abolitionist, Senator Henry L. Tyler, out of Massachusetts. But this bill abolishes slavery in the District of Columbia, and slaveholders in the District of Columbia were paid reparations of up to $300 for each slave that they own. Okay. And as Tremaine Lee on MSNBC talked about Thursday, February 22nd, 2024 on Alex Wagner's show, and he has a podcast dealing with reparations on MSNBC, MSNBC's website, and dealing with podcasts. You had a few, maybe 5 or 6 African Americans who owned slaves because they bought family members out of slavery in the District of Columbia, and they collected on reparations also. Now, the slaves were never, those slaves that were freed were not given reparations. Read this article here from this is from Senate.gov. The Zen Education Project has one, but the one from Senate.gov has more information. Okay. Senate.gov is the official website of the U.S. Senate. Landmark legislation, the District of Columbia Compensated Emancipation Act. So I hear people misstate what happened. And I hear people say, I've been on panel discussions, and, you know, I've been on, you see me on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Fridays. I've been on, it's been over 3 years. I started October 20th, 2020, and been on almost every Friday since then. I hear people say, oh, slave owners were given reparations during slavery here in the U.S. The slaves weren't given anything. Okay. This only applied to the District of Columbia. This is why we have to do more research. And this is why a lot of this stuff floating out here dealing with reparations, don't take this the wrong way. A lot of this stuff, Senator Henry L. Wilson, I should say, Senator Henry Wilson, a lot of this stuff is not going to go anywhere. Because if you're seeking a legal remedy to a historical problem, then that would imply that you understand both law and history. And unfortunately, a lot of people pushing this stuff dealing with reparations don't understand either one. And I can listen to them and tell that. A lot of this stuff is not going to go anywhere. They don't know how to make legal arguments. And the other thing is, as we deal within this class, and also in the second class that I teach, dealing with history from 1800 to 1968, race-based policies are illegal at the federal level based upon Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Section 601, non-discrimination and federally assisted programs. Nobody wants to have that conversation. Okay. But if we look at this very quickly here, landmark legislation, the District of Columbia Compensated Emancipation Act. On a visit to Washington, D.C. in 1836, the site of a slave auction held in the shadow of the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, convinced future Senator Henry Wilson of Massachusetts to, quote, give all land to the cause of emancipation, end quote. So he's elected to the U.S. Senate in 1855. This is 6 years before the Civil War begins, April 12, 1861. Senator Henry L. Wilson became a leading voice for the abolition of slavery during the U.S. Civil War. Okay, so make a long story short, the bill passes the House, passes the Senate. Okay, and then President Abraham Lincoln signs it into law April 16th, 1862. The bill freed enslaved people in the District of Columbia and compensated slave owners up to $300 for each person, that they own that was being set free. Now, the Hartford Daily Courant, Courant, celebrated that, quote, not a slave exists in their shackles have fallen, never to be restored, quote. In the months following the enactment of the law, commissioners approved more than 930 petitions granting freedom to 2,989 formerly enslaved people. DC Emancipation Day has been celebrated in the District of Columbia since 1862. Just 5 months later, September 1862, we know that was the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, September 22nd, 1862. The Emancipation Proclamation was a military strategy that Lincoln used, and the purpose was to bring the South back into the Union. Okay. All right. Now, so read this here at Senate.gov. Senate.gov is the official website of the U.S. Senate. So there are 80 to 100 articles that we look at in the class. We go deep into this history. Okay. And in the second class that I teach on Sundays, we have that class starting up in June. Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. We focus in on that period of history and get deep into this history also. Okay. All right. Now, so we look at things like Juneteenth briefly to dispel some of these myths. We talk about Imhotep, one of the greatest people who ever lived in human history. Imhotep was a philosopher. He was a priest, physician, architect, mathematician, designer of the step pyramid for Nasubiti, Pharaoh Zoser in the third dynasty. And Imhotep means he who comes in peace in the ancient Medu Neter language. And these are some famous statues of Imhotep. Now, this is Imhotep, and this is not Imhotep. In the 2001 movie, The Mummy Returns, the villain's name was, one of the villain's names was Imhotep. And they have this Arab-looking Eurasian actor, Arnold Vosloo, portraying Imhotep. And in the movie, he was a villain. He was evil. Okay. So many of our children will see this and think that one of our greatest ancestors was evil. Okay. And not even of African descent. This is a theft of the history, more cultural appropriation, a theft of the history. Here's a picture of the step pyramid that Imhotep was an architect of. This was for Nasubiti Zoser in the third dynasty. And there's a couple of books also on Imhotep we reference in the class. This one right here by Dr. Malefe Kete Asante, who's a friend of mine. I just interviewed Dr. Asante in April of 2023, dealing with the whole Cleopatra the Seventh controversy and the documentary that Jada Pinkett Smith did in the series African Queens. The Egyptian philosophers, Ancient African Voices from Imhotep to Akhenaten. Okay, excellent book. They talk about all these philosophers: Ptahhotep, Imhotep, Kagimni, Sanchi, all these before Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato. Okay, and Imhotep, we see around 2700 BC he lives. Depending upon which timeline of history you look at, the timelines of history can be 200 to 300 years off. But we know at least 130,000 years of our history has been stolen. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the course outline. And once again, the course, as I said before, the course outline, we have it right on the homepage of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Right at the top when you see the information for this class. So you can register for this class right now. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. can go watch it. You can watch it anytime, even after the 10-week online course is over with. You can go back and watch the entire class. Okay. So, as soon as you register, you can watch the 2 previous classes and get caught up and join us Sunday, February 25th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We go through and look at the different dating systems of BC and AD popularized by an English monk named the Venerable Bede. We look at the 1619 project. We talk about that some and how a lot of what we know, a lot of what we've been taught about 1619 is false. Okay. And we go through and break that down. And then we deal with the date. Even though 1619 did take place, August 20th, 1619, 29 Negroes are on, or 29 Africans are on the White Lion pirate ship. Okay. The White Lion pirate ship, which was an English pirate ship. A lot of the history surrounding 1619 is false. And when we look at the work from Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, and who was a friend of mine as well. We know he passed away in 2023. We see that African people have been in the land we call the United States of America going back at least 51,700 years. All right. Now, in 1619, codified slave laws didn't even exist in any of the 13 colonies. Codified slave laws. The first colony to have codified slave laws is going to be Massachusetts in 1641. Comes to Virginia around 1660. It hits the different colonies at different times. The mistake that is made when we retell this history is we think this whole system of slavery existed in all the 13 colonies as soon as those Africans got off the ship. That's not the case at all. And if you read chapter 2 of Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr., this is the 6th edition, he lays out a lot of that history. And we see the way we think this history evolved is not actually how it happened. Okay. And that's why you have to study Bacon's Rebellion in 1675, 1676. But this is a historical marker here at in Point Comfort in Virginia. And there's a good article called Much of What We've Been Told About Virginia 1619 First Africans is Wrong. 1526 doesn't get talked about enough. And you had the Spanish who were trying to set up a permanent settlement here in the Georgia, South Carolina area. And they take 100 African slaves into that area in 1526. Those Africans are going to have a revolt and disappear. It's believed they went to go live with Native Americans. But this is 93 years before Jamestown, Virginia. How is it fixed? 1526 doesn't get talked about. But like I said, African people were here for tens of thousands of years before slavery existed, and we were here for thousands of years before the people who we call Native Americans came into existence. If you read The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep, and his new book came out in late 2021, The First Americans Were Africans, Revised and Expanded. On page 14 of his first book, he lays out evidence from an archaeological discovery in 2004 by Dr. Albert Goodyear in Allendale County, South Carolina, that shows an African presence dating back at least 51,700 years ago. And they look at 13 pieces of evidence, 13 different types of evidence. They found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, and tools. They found 13 different types of evidence, categories of evidence that thoroughly documents an African presence dating back at least 51,700 years ago. Now, this is before Native Americans came into existence. Now, this is not to take anything away from Native American history, but we all know that African people were the first people on the face of the earth. One of the things we look at in the class are archaeological discoveries. And there was an archaeological discovery coming out of Morocco in June of 2017 that shows how they found Homo sapiens. They found remains of Homo sapiens that date back 300,000 to 350,000 years ago And this was found in Morocco. These are over 100,000 years older than the earliest remains that they had found of Homo sapiens sapiens, or modern man, Homo sapiens, that date back 195,000 years ago in Ethiopia. So the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets, the more research they do, the older we get. So when these different archaeological discoveries come out, they have to keep pushing the timelines back. You know, Juvenile had the song Back That Thing Up. When these archaeological discoveries come out, they keep having to back that thing up. They keep having to back the timelines up. And when you study a lot of these discoveries, the scientists are saying that now they have to rethink everything. These archaeological discoveries are pushing the timelines back. And they're saying they have to rethink everything. So we've been led to believe that African people were the first people on Earth, but they went all around the world, but did not come to North America. That's a lie. That's a lie. And once we wrap our minds around the concept, and I'm going to go back to the cover of Dr. David Imhotep's book, because this is one of the problems I have when we celebrate African American History Month and don't understand history. If we approach history from the perspective that African people first came to this land that we call the United States of America, conquered and shackled in chains, conquered by Europeans, then you are already starting the conversation with a defeatist attitude and a false concept. No, this was our land stolen from us. This was our land stolen from us. Once we wrap our minds around the concept, because the research has already been done, and you have European archaeologists like Dr. Albert Goodyear who tell the truth. Once we wrap our minds around the concept that this was our land stolen from us, and we did not first come to this land conquered and shackled in chains, you would have a seismic shift overnight in the conscious level of African people in America. Now, this is not saying the transatlantic slave trade did not happen, because you got some people out here that don't study history, don't study chronology of history, and say, well, because Africans were already here, that means transatlantic slave trade did not happen. That's false. All that stuff happened. We were just here tens of thousands of years before we were told that we came here. Okay? And one of the things we do in the class, we look at where Christopher Columbus goes on his voyages, and Columbus never came to the land that we call the United States of America. That's another lie that's told. Columbus is crucial to understanding the expansion of the transatlantic slave trade, especially after Columbus dies in 1506, and then you have the Asiento de Negros, August 1518, signed into law by King Charles V, also known as King Charles I, which drastically of Spain, which drastically expands the transatlantic slave trade. That's also as a result of Christopher Columbus and Bartholomew de las Casas, Right Reverend Bishop Bartholomew de las Casas, traveling on the voyages, some of those voyages with Columbus, seeing the atrocities inflicted on Native Americans. And de las Casas goes to the Pope and says that they need to stop enslaving Native Americans and focus on saving the souls of Native Americans. And they needed to enslave primarily African people, secondarily white people. And this is what's going to happen. Now, he's going to quickly reverse course and regret that and fight for the abolition of slavery, but it's too late then. This thing is exploding, and the Spanish were the second ones involved in the transatlantic slave trade. Now, keep in mind, Columbus sails August 3rd, 1492, late in the same year that the African Moors lose control of their last stronghold, Granada, January 2nd, 1492. Okay, the Spanish Granada Wars. But when we look at the Khoisan have the oldest DNA on the planet. The Khoisan are the short-statured Africans that go all around the world. Okay, and they were here in the land we call the United States of America. Now, an October 2012 genetic study published in Science magazine found that the Khoisan in Southern Africa are the oldest ethnic group of modern humans, with their ancestral line originating about 100,000 years ago. The Khoisan, formerly called by the derogatory term Bushmen, are also called pygmies, another derogatory term, are genetically unique, and no other currently known population had separated so early from our common modern human ancestor, according to the report. Now, these are two Khoisan women right here, okay? And short-statured Africans, the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. Now, the Khoisan live mainly in southern Africa, territory spanning Botswana, Namibia, Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. They are largely divided into two groups, hunters and gatherers, or gatherers, known as the Sans people, and keepers of the livestock, known as the Khoisan people. Now, Sara Baartman, Sara Baartman, Hottentot Venus, who was the Nicki Minaj, the Cardi B, the Megan Thee Stallion of her time, because she was paraded around Europe and shown off in freak shows as a freak of nature. She had huge buttocks. Okay. She suffered from steatophagia, which is fatty deposits around the buttocks and thighs. She was a Khoisan woman. She had large breasts, and she is going to die. It's believed of suicide around 26 years old, and it's also believed that she became a prostitute as well. Okay, so you go study, and I actually did a video dealing with the history of Sara Baartman, who was Khoisan, who was Khoisan. You see striking parallels between her and Megan Thee Stallion, Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, Ruby Rose, Sexy Red, Sukihana. Except she was sold into slavery, doing it unwillingly. Today, we've been convinced to dehumanize ourselves for money, and we do it willingly. Let that sink in. Now, the Khoisan languages include the distinctive click sounds, the click language, that are not found in the languages of their neighbors. There's a good article from AtlantaBlackStar.com called 5 Ethnic Groups That Prove the First Humans Were Black. 5 ethnic groups that prove the first humans were black. Okay, so we go through and look at this history, look at archaeological discoveries, all different types of things like this, and provide you with the evidence. Okay, and if we go back here to the course outline, and like I said, I've been teaching this class since 2017, and the course has evolved immensely since 2017. Okay, and here, this is the first time that I've taught the class when I have the whole course outline completed up front and published as well. Okay, so you all can check this out at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for this online class right now. The content is PG-13. You can use this information with your children also. Okay. We talk about the film Black Panther. The film Black Panther deals with African history, African culture, African language, African spiritual systems. There are 11 different African cultures that we see represented in the film Black Panther, but also the language spoken in the film Black Panther is a Bantu language called isiXhosa. Okay, isiXhosa is a real African language, so we deal with that. And then we talk about the skit from the Richard Pryor show, 1977, where Richard Pryor is a Egyptologist. 1909, there's 1909 in Egypt, and this deals with why the history and culture, why all this was stolen. He comes across the book of Coming Forth by Day, or what they call the book of life in the skit. So we talk about Bantu languages as well, like Kwanzaa is a Bantu language, and there's also a piece that deals with Black Panther Wakanda Forever is rich in mythology. And it talks about the real life African and indigenous inspirations behind what we see in the film Black Panther. Okay. One of the things I deal with early in the class is the term African American. And we go through early on to dispel a lot of this misinformation that's floating around out here. A lot of people, and I don't know where this lie started, but a lot of people are under the misinformation, under the misimpression or misinformation that the term African American was created by the Reverend Jesse Jackson. That's blatantly false. Now we know Reverend Jesse Jackson, as well as other African American scholars, reintroduced the term African American in the late 1980s, right around 1988, 1989. Okay. But as I posted on Facebook, and I posted it again today, this is an excerpt from the book Malcolm X Speaks. And we know we just commemorated the 59th anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X, February 21st, 1965. In the Ballad of the Bullet, April 3rd, 1964, when Malcolm delivers the Ballad of the Bullet in Cleveland, Ohio, at Corey Methodist Church, he uses the term African American. And on page 36 of this book, in the Ballad of the Bullet, he uses the term African American. And what I'm going to do is, let's see here. Let's throw this up. Try to expand this as much as I can. Let's look at this here. So here's the post. I also posted this on our fan page, the African History Network as well. Right here. Let's go to this. Okay, I said, for some reason, people are shocked when I tell them that Malcolm X used the term African American in the speech, the Ballad of the Bullet, April 3rd, 1964, in Cleveland, Ohio. For some reason, many people operate under a myth that Reverend Jesse Jackson created this term. He did not. Reverend Jackson reintroduced the term, but since most of our people don't understand history, they fall for the myth. The pages referenced are from the book Malcolm X Speaks. It looks at some key speeches he made in 1963 to 95. I think it's also important to note Willie Lynch never historically existed, and the Willie Lynch letter 1712 has proven to be a fraud, which is true. Willie Lynch never historically existed. That's one of the biggest frauds in history. Research professor Manu Ampem, who's a friend of mine, I'll be interviewing him sometime in late March 2024. Research professor Manu Ampem for more information on this topic. Please note the term African American is as old as, so read the article from NOLA.com, NOLA. The term African American is as old as America itself, reports. But when we look at this here, this is from pages 36 and 37 of the Ballad or the Malcolm X Speaks, the book Malcolm X Speaks, edited with prefatory notes by George Brightman. And Malcolm says, right now in this country, if you and I, 22 million African Americans, that's what we are, Africans who are in America, you're nothing but Africans, nothing but Africans. In fact, you get farther calling yourself African instead of Negro. Okay. But check this out. Now, also at blackpast.org, and blackpast.org has thousands of pages, about 6,000 pages of articles dealing with African history and African American history. They have the transcript of the Ballad of the Bullet speech, and let me see which date is this, because Malcolm gave that speech a few times. He delivered it April 12th, 1964 in Detroit, Michigan at King Solomon Baptist Church. But let me pull this up from Black Past. Because I was just looking at it a couple of days ago. And actually, do I have the link in here? Hold on, I thought I had the link. in one of these, I posted the link. Oh, there was a post I did dealing with Malcolm commemorating his the day of his assassination, and I have the link to the Ballad of the Bullet there. But let me pull this up right quick for you. This is at blackpast.org. I want to show people this because, once again, like I said, a lot of us don't understand this history. Okay, so this is at blackpast.org. 1964, Malcolm X, The Ballad of the Bullet. This is the version from April 3rd, 1964 in Cleveland, Ohio. All right. And if we go here, right here, right now in this country, if you and I, 22 million African Americans, that's what we are, Africans who are in America. Okay. This is Malcolm. We were using the term African Americans in the 1960s. I don't know where this lie started that Reverend Jesse Jackson created that term. Professor James Small, one of my teachers personally, he told me personally that he said we were calling ourselves African Americans in the 1960s. So let's, during African American History Month especially, can we please expose these myths and stop spreading these lies? Willie Lynch never historically existed. Jesse Jackson did not create the term African American. African people did not first come here August 20th, 1619. Yes, August 20th, 1619 did happen, but we were here for thousands of years before that. Okay. All right. How you all like this type of information? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. Now, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network a few ways. Be sure to register for the online history classes that I teach on Saturdays. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We do thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. This is a 10-week class. We're doing more than 10 weeks this time around. Next classes are Saturday, May 4th, Saturday, May 11th, Saturday, May 18th, and Saturday, May 25th, 2024, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Click right here to register here for the class. The class is on sale $60, regularly $130. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it any time. So a year from now, 2 years from now, you can still watch the entire course. We have the lesson plan here for the entire course also already laid out, so you can look at the content that we cover. We deal with 80 to 100 articles, and I put together this class. I've been teaching this class on and off since 2017. Okay, I've been studying history 34 years now. Do lectures across the country. Been hosting the African History Network show 14 years, but we look at there's over 200 slides that I put together, 80 to 100 articles that we'll go through and look at. The 15 books that we reference. You don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in class. I'll show you excerpts of the books on the screen usually. And we'll look at video clips of interviews I've done with historians like Professor James Small, Professor Kabahai Wapakamane, Anthony Browder, who wrote Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, which is one of the books we use in the class, Runoko Rashidi, who wrote Black Star, The African Presence in Early Europe, which is another book that we use in the class. Okay, so you can register for this. This content is PG-13. You can use this information with your children as well. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, and we'll post the link here. The link's in the thread of this broadcast. And you can support us through PayPal and Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. So we have the information right here on the website as well. This is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it'll say Michael and show my picture there. These are fake African History Network Cash App accounts here. that have been stealing money from us. There are a few other ones out there I've identified. I'm still trying to get them shut down. You can click right here on our link and it shows our QR code, okay, for Cash App. This helps us stay on the air, keep doing the research, pay some of the bills, etc. Upgrade